votes, and the members are heading over.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for being patient. They're coming down the hall.
Boy, it's cool in there.
I have copies of the letters.
Or 2 or 3.
Send me an email.
Shall we wait for Lucille?
Yeah.
Shall we wait
Yes,
for
I
Lucille?
think so. Let's give her a couple of minutes and then we'll begin.
Do you want to wait for him?
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
wait a minute for
yeah.
Lucille.
We're gonna wait for Ms. Roybal-Allard.
So it's 12 o'clock. What's the next thing? 1 o'clock is
Okay.
1, 2 o'clock is the and then we'll race to the airport.
Yeah.
We should have some time in there. Okay. But this doesn't have to go on forever. No, there's a lot of people want to talk to you afterwards. Who else do we have here from us?
Susan's right here.
Can we call Lucille and see if she wanted to afterwards? Not sure. You are, or you would?
I've got a place to go and then I'll head over.
When they said, where their grandchildren could start or take pictures. I said,
If they're old enough.
yeah.
14 months,
You're
huh?
supposed to be. Mine's 14. Mine's 14.
And they're in their prime, picnics, yeah.
When's your birthday present?
Can you,
See, what's funny is like I can help anybody, but my mother would help now.
And then we'll bring her right out.
Well, I guess it's good afternoon now. You know, for over 20 years, the Republican Party has repeatedly refused to act to repair our failed immigration system, to mend the broken laws. And instead, they've claimed, including our incoming president, that immigrants are rapists or criminals or undesirable elements in our society. And we know that isn't true. The immigrant community forms the fabric of our society. They're our co-workers, our doctors, our teachers, our neighbors, our brothers and sisters in faith, our artist caregivers, the farm workers, our construction workers, the fellow students of our children and grandchildren. Now, we understand that because of the Republican anti-immigrant rhetoric, the immigrant community is now living in even greater fear with the prospect of a President Trump, who has further stoked the fear by vowing to reverse all of the administrative actions that were taken by President Obama to give some kind of security to undocumented children while the Congress gets its act together. You know, Martin Luther King once said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We want the immigrant community to know that we are not giving up. We're going to fight for them. We're going to stand by them. We're on their side. So what can we do? One thing that we are doing today is asking President Obama to grant a pardon to DACA recipients. As the president said when he spoke to the nation, dreamers are young people who study in our schools, play in our neighborhoods, they're friends with our kids, they pledge allegiance to our flag, they are Americans in their hearts and their minds in every single way but one on paper. When he created DACA, 1 million kids stepped forward. And now the Department of Homeland Security has their names, their addresses, their fingerprints. It is the responsibility of the president to do everything he can to keep them safe, since they relied on his program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. We have prepared a letter signed by the three of us who have worked so hard on immigration issues throughout these years. We urge the president to use his authority found in Article 2 of the Constitution to grant a pardon for the immigration violations of these young people, not only for the prior violations, but prospectively. There is a long line of cases that indicate that the pardon power of the executive is not reviewable by the other two branches of government. So we urge the president to provide security to these young people. I know that I have spoken personally to children who are so frightened about what is to happen to them next. I think we owe it to these young people who have worked so hard to be part of America, to have peace of mind. And we hope that the president can take action during this Thanksgiving season so that young people can enjoy that most American holiday, Thanksgiving, knowing that they don't have to be looking over their shoulder as President Trump takes office. Now I'd like to yield to our colleague, Mr. Gutierrez.
We are here because we all need to take a stand. We need to take a stand for what is right and make our communities do not despair or feel alone. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. They have 5 million American citizen children. And there are almost 750,000 young people who came forward, registered with the government, went through a background check. Yes, an exhaustive criminal background check. And now the government gave them a work permit, gave them a Social Security card, and welcomed them to the workforce, to study, and to thrive in America. That is a group that we're talking about. And I want to make clear that no one has ever challenged the validity of this action of President Barack Obama. No one. We may have lost, or we may have got a tie in the Supreme Court, with other executive actions, but they were never challenged by the Republicans, never. And they clearly could have, but never did. That's who we're talking about today. But let's make it clear. The entire community is vulnerable. And I want to make absolutely clear to all of those who feel a sense of fear and of hopelessness and despair that this is the first of many strategies that we will be evaluating and calling for to be done. So to make sure that everyone eventually is in a safe place. Right now, immigrant communities are frightened. And by that I mean citizens, legal immigrants, and undocumented immigrants. Most of whom have lived here 10 years. Many, 20 years. They're worried that their families will be destroyed. They'll lose their businesses and their livelihoods. And they're worried that the education they work so hard for their children, almost all of whom are American citizens. Almost all the children of the 11 million are American citizens, will simply go up in smoke. They have no option to become legal in the United States or to leave and come back legally, and yet their lives and their children's lives are here in this country. They're not the only communities that are frightened by the election of Donald Trump. Children in Muslim families are frightened. LGBT families, across the communities of color, low-income families, even women who have been victimized by sexual assault and violence. This is very widespread fear among people who are worried they will be targeted with violence, punitive policies, discrimination. And the greatest impact is on children. This week I spoke at a press conference at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago with officials from the state, the county, and the city. Please make note of this. A 200% increase in the calls to suicide prevention and counseling services in the city of Chicago alone. And nationally, it's up 250%. That's how fearful. I ask yourself, why does a person call a suicide prevention hotline? The fear is widespread and it's dangerous. We will be working over the coming months to identify as many ways as we can to help our fellow Americans protect themselves and make their families and children safe. For us, action is a matter of life and death. Action. And the action we're asking the president to take is a matter of life and death. We are starting by calling on President Obama to provide relief while he is still in office for one particular group, dreamers who came forward, registered with the government. We are asking the president to pardon them for their undocumented status, which by definitions happened when they were juveniles and children brought here by their parents. This would not give them a permanent safe place, but it is a start. This group has already been vetted by the federal government. Remember, we're talking about people who came forward, paid hundreds of dollars, and were vetted, provided their fingerprints, and the government said, go. You are good people. They are more at risk because they registered. So of the 11 million, who do they have fingerprints for? Who do they have addresses? Where they go to school, where they work? They know where they fill their income taxes out. They know everything about them. And everybody knows that they're leaders and in the line of first defense of immigrant community. The brave advocacy by coming forward and declaring that they're here and are proud to fight for their communities and families. It has energized the immigrant community and lit a fire under old people like all of us in the U.S. Congress. They have become role models for the rest of the community, role models for all of us, for the nation, really, they're role models. I want to make a couple of other points. You know, when President Obama ran for re-election in 2012, he ran a commercial in Spanish. My friends from Univision and Telemundo and the other Spanish networks will probably remember it most. It wasn't an English language commercial. But I remember it. And in that ad, he said, I granted DACA to dreamers because I saw in them los mismos valores que yo he inculcado en mis propias hijas. That's what he said about the dreamers. I have inculcated in them the same values and aspiration that my wife and I have inculcated in our own daughters. He made it personal. He said they were like his children. So we asked the president, what would you do to protect your children? They are our children. We are all asking is for the president to continue in that commitment, to continue seeing in these young children the same hopes as he sees in his daughters, to follow through on his promise to put them in a safe place where they can work hard and achieve in everything they can achieve. Look, in 2012, President Obama embraced the dreamers. Go back. I encourage you to go back. Go back to the Democratic Convention in Charlotte. Prime time at 9 p.m. Who was speaking? Dreamers, undocumented dreamers were speaking to the nation, saying, we are part of America. We brought them forward in our campaign. We cannot, that the campaign is over, leave them alone. As Democrats, as parents, as leaders, as Americans, we simply can't leave those who trusted their government to come forward. Let's be clear. When Donald Trump says 2 to 3 million immigrants are criminals and gangbangers, he's lying. And it means he tends to do massive sweeps in immigrant communities. This is no different than when Trump, during the campaign, called Mexicans rapists and drug dealers. He wants to paint us all with the same brush of criminality. And when he appoints Sheriff Arpaio or Jeff Sessions or Chris Kobach or Steve Bannon to senior positions, he really means mass deportations. Lastly, I'm not one of those that is optimistic. I see Senator Sessions at the head of Homeland Security with his bullhorn at a school, at a nursery, at a child care center, at a neighborhood grocery store, ordering the sweeps indiscriminate to round up the millions of people that they said they would. We need to have the President of the United States use the authority under the Constitution to pardon them for anything they may have done, immigration related, and anything prospectively they may do, immigration related, so that they at least can take a step forward. Voy a ser breve en español, creo es importante. ¿Qué estamos pidiendo hoy? Que el presidente de los Estados Unidos utilice el poder garantizado en la Constitución de los Estados Unidos y que use ese perdón que él tiene garantizado, que no puede ser visitado o revisado por ninguna otra agencia del gobierno, es del presidente. Que él perdone cualquier acción de estos soñadores en cuestiones de inmigración que pueden haber hecho o que pueden ser en el futuro. Y de esa manera decirle al mundo, déjenlos quietos, no los deporten. Ellos son el fruto de nuestra comunidad. Y según el presidente, pudo utilizar estos soñadores en su campaña para razones políticas. En gran riesgo se pusieron. Nosotros los invitamos que salieran, que confiaran en el gobierno. Ahora no podemos hacer otra cosa que demandar que el presidente utilice su poder de perdón y lo ponga en un sitio donde pueden estar seguros. Con eso quiero invitar. With that, I want to invite Lucille Roybal-Allard, the gentle lady from California.
Thank you very, very much, Luis. It's truly an honor to be standing here with my colleagues, Congresswoman Lofgren and Congressman Gutiérrez and Congresswoman Judy Chu, to urge President Obama to protect our dreamers. As you have heard from the previous speakers, it is by no fault of their own that these Americans are prisoners in their own country, living their daily lives not knowing if they will be deported to a foreign country.
And make no mistake about it, if they are forced to leave the United States, it is our country that is going to be a big loser. We will lose attorneys, and I want to give you a couple of examples because I want to put a human face on who we're talking about, because as Louise said, these young people and the immigrants are being portrayed as criminals and rapists. So let me give you a couple of examples of who we're talking about. We will lose attorneys like Lisbeth, who came to the United States at age 14, graduated from Santa Clara University, and received the Dean's Leadership Award for her volunteer work with low-income workers. Lisbeth paid her taxes and tried to make her home, the United States, a better place to live for you and me. We will lose Jose. Jose, a student at the University of Florida, recently completed his internship here in the United States House of Representatives. That's right. Like thousands of other Americans, Jose interned for this very institution. His former legislative director remarked that he was one of the most remarkable, hardworking interns he had ever known. Jose will graduate this December with his bachelor's in political science. After graduation, Jose wants to continue strengthening and contributing to the only home he knows, the United States. These are only two of many thousands of young people who are living in fear. Many, as you've heard, are living with depression, and for over 200 years, the U.S. Constitution has served as the most powerful tool to protect Americans from injustice, just like with these young people. So I joined with my colleagues in urging President Obama to use the powers granted to him, because he does have these powers, granted to him by our great Constitution to protect Americans like Lisbeth and Jose from this terrible injustice. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite Judy Chu, the leader of our Asian Pacific Island Caucus, to join us in speaking on this issue. Welcome, Judy.
I am so honored to stand here with my incredible colleagues, Congress members Zoe Lofgren, Luis Gutierrez, and Lucille Roybal-Allard, to take an action to call on President Obama to protect dreamers. In my district, I have gotten many calls from dreamers who are frightened, who are very fearful about their status. And I've also gotten calls from advocacy groups such as Churla, who have been inundated with calls from dreamers who don't know what to do next. We promised these recipients security, and now they are facing a nightmare. These are immigrants who are fearful of what Donald Trump may do. And what we need to make sure is that the credibility of this government is maintained. It's a government that promised to protect its people, and millions of people trusted us. This hits particularly close to home, as 1/3 of the people currently protected by DACA live in my state of California. When we asked immigrants to come out of the shadows, we never imagined the election of a candidate who would run on a policy of mass deportation. Now that Mr. Trump has been elected, we have just 2 months to keep the list of those who qualified for DACA and DAPA from becoming a list of targets for deportation. I call on the administration to consider all options to prevent the use of these names for deportation. We must do the right thing today or risk losing the trust of the vulnerable forever.
We have a few minutes for questions, if there are any questions. The lady in the second row.
Yeah, that's Woodruff with the Daily Beast. In this letter, it says that the two of you received reports of dreamers who've taken their lives because of the election of Mr. Trump. Do you have any more information on how many
We don't. We've had calls in explaining that, but honestly, I'm very concerned about it. But we also don't want to create a network effect for that. Part of the reason why we're having this press conference today is to let young people know that they're despondent, that they need not consider that option, that there is hope ahead. We are asking our president to take this step. He's not the problem. It's the incoming president, President Trump, who's the problem. So we're hoping that President Obama can provide this relief so that young people, it will not give them legal status, but that they don't have to live in fear and be so despondent as to even consider such an extreme measure.
Yeah, let me just say, here's one thing that we do know, and I think that it's very important, right? We know there's been a 200% increase to suicide prevention hotlines in the city of Chicago. We know that nationally, and you can check this, 250%. Why do people call suicide prevention hotlines? That's I think it's a simple, you see what's happening, and we need a response. If they were calling a cancer hotline, we'd figure there must be some cancer out there. There's something going out there. And secondly, so the day after the election, I got an opportunity to talk to young people. I thought I was going to, quite honest, I thought I was going to talk to them and tell them the way Hillary Clinton won the election. I wish you would have been in the room with me to see them shaking, shivering, to see the kind of fear that they felt. They didn't wake up on Wednesday thinking it's just another day. So understand that it's real, that it's palpable, and that we need to respond. And so what we're saying to the President of the United States, when you see, you are the President of hope, give these kids hope. Use that pen. And for those who said he can't do it, you remember when he said he couldn't sign the first executive order, right? Remember that? Oh, you're dreaming, Luis. Oh, so you guys are all dreaming. He can't do that. Well, he did. And they came forward. And it was so good that no one challenged it.
But could President Trump reverse such a pardon?
No, a pardon, we've provided a 2-page fact sheet, which I commend to you, on the case law and the historical precedent. Presidential pardons are not reviewable nor reversible by successors.
Is there a precedent of President granting pardon to undocumented migrants?
There's precedent for pardons being issued for non-criminal offenses, and that's cited in the handout, which I recommend to you.
But the fact that we're not talking about one or maybe a dozen of people, we're talking about more than 700,000 people. How much of a challenge do you think that's going to pose to the president?
Well, I'll tell you this. There have been large numbers pardoned for policy reasons in the past. I don't know if you remember when President Carter issued a pardon to people who'd fled to Canada to avoid the draft. That was hundreds of thousands of people. When President Lincoln tried to heal the nation after the Civil War, there were pardons issued to those who tried to break up the Union. So there's a process that is in place that we don't challenge for one-by-one convictions that individuals may have merit. This is a policy issue. It's in keeping with our fine history as a nation.
And I would just, if I could just, I think we need to stress, I think it's an important question. No son cualquier persona. No es como no lo podemos identificar. El gobierno tiene sus huellas digitales. Tiene todos sus antecedentes. Saben dónde viven, dónde estudian, dónde trabajan. Y todos han sido, ¿cómo les diré?, evaluados por el gobierno y suministrando sus huellas digitales. ¿Y qué el gobierno dictó? Están libres de cualquier pecado criminal. Libre. ¿Qué se le concedió? Una libertad de cualquier objeción que tenían sobre su situación de inmigración. Nosotros queremos que el presidente, mire, él lo puede hacer. Y nosotros tenemos que insistir que lo haga.
¿Están ustedes trabajando con los legisladores republicanos en este mismo esfuerzo?
Mire, hay legisladores republicanos que están tomando gestiones propias. Me alegro mucho. Nosotros no pensábamos que se podía esperar. Si tú tienes una buena idea para promover justicia, para promover igualdad y prevenir muerte, tú tienes que actuar inmediatamente. Así que yo y mis dos colegas decidimos ayer que había el momento de actuar, era ahora. Pero me alegro mucho escuchar de mis colegas republicanos y de otros. Como les dije, esta es el primer paso de muchos que estamos evaluando.
You mentioned the list. The pardon doesn't grant legal status in itself. Is there anything else you're doing to keep this list away from the hands of? You mentioned, for instance, Sessions and a Bullhorn. Are there any other actions you're taking with the list to lock it down or delete it?
Well, we've had private communications, as you might imagine, with the administration. This is our idea that we've asked the president to do. I think, some legal scholars have said that the prospective pardon, can you do that? And so, different lawyers have different opinions. We're asking the president to do it. If he's got a better idea, he can come back to us and tell us what that good idea is. But we have an obligation to protect these young people who we asked to come forward, who did come forward, who've been vetted, and who are now known to us, and who are heavily traumatized. I mean, to talk to these kids now, giving them a hug is not enough, although we have done that.
What was the initial reaction of the White House when you approached them with the idea?
Well, we're here today.
We're here today.
Yeah, this is our first.
Why it's important to pardon in the future? Why not only in the past?
Well, porque nosotros sabemos que cuando termina y se revoca su licencia de soñador y su permiso, bueno, eso es lo que ellos plantean hacer, revocar el permiso de trabajo, seguro social y todo lo que conlleva con eso. Déjame decirte algo bien personal. Yo tengo una soñadora en mi oficina. ¿Qué yo voy a hacer cuando ella no tiene un permiso de trabajo? Despedirla. Ella vino y salió. Todos los conocemos. Muchos van a perder sus trabajos. Porque entonces sería ilegal emplearlos. Porque no tienen permiso de trabajo. Yo les digo, yo voy a buscar la manera de pagarle a esa joven. Ella ha sido increíble trabajadora. Una de las mejores que tengo en mi oficina. Y como ella hay otros que trabajan en oficinas congresionales. Pero tú sabes lo que van a hacer. ¿Qué van a hacer aquí en el departamento de servicios humanos? Me van a decir, no le vamos a pagar. Ya no es documentada. Y cuando vienen a mi oficina congresional, que ha sido un santuario para inmigrantes, donde ellos saben que están protegidos, y yo no puedo ni proteger los mismos trabajadores en esa oficina. Hay que hacer algo. Esta es nuestra respuesta a esta crisis. Y quiero ser bien, bien claro. El presidente tiene una responsabilidad. Él le ofreció este camino. Le pidió que salieran. Le pidió que tuvieran confianza en fe en el gobierno. Ahora es el momento del presidente de actuar. Lo utilizó en sus campañas. El único anuncio que yo escuché, en el 2012, no es voten por mí porque yo voy a mejorar la educación. Voten por mí porque yo voy a crear más escuelas o mejores viviendas. ¿Sabe lo que yo escuché? Voten por mí porque yo perdoné a estos soñadores. Y hoy tienen permiso de trabajo. Lo único que quiero decir es, sería una falta tan increíble hacia nuestra comunidad que alguien le garantice. Y para que seamos también bien claros, Yo me siento responsable también. Lucio se siente responsable. Zoe Lofgren se siente responsable. We all feel a great degree of responsibility. We challenged this president to do this. We fought. Our whole community fought. We went to jail. We protested. We condemned him. We shouted him down. He couldn't go anywhere. So yes, we all feel a sense of responsibility. We need to act in the fullest, most impactful. And I'm really happy. Mire, lo único que yo le puedo decir hoy es esto. Antes de privarle su libertad, tendrán que privar nuestra libertad. Nosotros estamos dispuestos a todos para que estos jóvenes, no solo ellos, sus padres, mire, ustedes escuchan, todo es inmigrantes criminales, inmigrantes criminales. Es lo mismo, eran inmigrantes mexicanos ultrajistas, traficantes de droga. Ahora todos somos criminales. No todos son criminales. La inmensa mayoría son personas como estos soñadores que pueden pasar cualquier prueba. With the pardon, they could renew their DACA.
No. The DACA was an action taken by the administration to provide deferred action for 2 years, but that is reversible. And the work permits statutorily were allowed for those who have work authorization. That's been true for other people who had deferred authorization, for example, librarians who couldn't go back to Liberia, TPS and the like. That's not a pardon. A pardon is for an offense, and you cannot be sanctioned for the offense. It doesn't give a status. It doesn't give a work permit, but it allows these kids not to worry about deportation. They don't have a work permit and they don't have deferred action, but they have a pardon. They're not going to be subject to deportation. I just think, in addition, I know Lucille has something important to say, but I want these young people to know that they are not alone. You know, a majority of Americans voted for Secretary Clinton. She won the election, but not the presidency. For the second time in 16 years, the person who got the most votes did not win the presidency because of our electoral college system. That's important because young people need to know that not all of America is against them. We're standing up for them. In colleges across California, they are forming an effort to prevent enforcement actions against DREAM Act kids who are students there. These young people are not alone. They're not going to be abandoned by us.
No, the only thing I want to say is, because I'm just a little concerned about the direction of this of the questioning and the discussions, and my concern is that we may end up with a headline saying that we're here and we want to pardon the 11 million immigrants in this country. So I want to emphasize that who we are talking about, and you've heard this from both the other speakers, we're talking about just the dreamers, those who have come forward, have had background checks, our government said they are not criminals, they have been given work permits. So I'm really hoping that the press is hearing exactly what our intent is and who it is we are talking about. These are kids. We feel a sense of responsibility, not just because we worked and got the president to do the executive order, but we went out into our districts and we talked to the dreamers, and they asked us, is it really okay for us to do this? What happens when Obama leaves? And then are we going to be thrown out of the country? Are we going to be put in jail? And we said, no, don't worry. You need to come forward. You'll have all the background checks. You will be able to keep your legal status. And now we are in a situation where all that we said, in fact, could possibly be reversed. These young people, again, came to this country not under their own volition, but were brought here by parents, by relatives, some as young as 2, 3 years old babies. That's who we are talking about. Those that have already they've been vetted, and we're hoping to include the others who would fall into that category as well. So please, we are not talking about any kind of amnesty or pardon for 11 million immigrants. We're talking about these young people.
I'm going to end with just one last, and some of us will be able to remain to answer any questions. Sometimes I say things in Spanish and I don't repeat them in English. Me voy con esa emoción de español. But I just want to make it clear. You know, yes, we do feel a sense of responsibility, and it is very personal for us. We have committed ourselves for decades to stop deportations and to look for a fair immigration system. And to have young people in my office who have helped others get right with the law, who have helped citizens become citizens, who have helped people get their green cards, who have helped bring their aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters to this country. That's what the dreamer in my office has done. She's helped literally thousands of people get right with the law. And to think that we cannot protect her and people like her. And she is unique in my life, but not unique in the life of our community. They have been working very, very, very hard. We know who they are. They came out of the shadows. Leave them alone. And we ask the president to take this first step, and we'll be back with further steps as we move forward to defend our immigrant community. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, you did good.
So, Congressman, actually, let's go outside.